5 minutes. Then he's gonna make some announcements. They come to me. I'll say this part and then hand over to you. Right? No, 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 no. I'm sure you will.
No, no, I don't know about that, but I'll try and do my best.
Anika, you have one more extra?
Yes, yes.
You want to order coffee? Yes, sir. No, these lights will remain on.
Rahul sir is sitting in the center of the mic.
No, they've been put away for us. So make sure that we don't blink. I notice you put all the stuff.
I'm not saying anything. Chairman.
She will do the initial on this, hand it over to me,
And then you
and then I will take it, then I hand it over to you.
Sure.
You can hand it back to me and you.
Sure.
That's not my scope. No.
It's visible now?
Chairman, I want
Charles,
to introduce all of
Usha,
us.
Matthew, all there. Thank you.
The only place where you all come in is that when I introduce you all, maybe if you can just ignore me.
3 minutes.
There is no place there.
Only keep me out more. I might as well not see that fluctuation. I'm not looking at it. Exactly. Might as well not look at them.
You see, they will do this to scale. Not get scared, but seating capacity.
It is. Largely used for town hall meetings, leadership meetings. So we had a town hall with Mark and Rodolfo in the morning. We couldn't do it here because we had the setup, otherwise usually town halls are here. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 66th Annual General Meeting of Sanofi India Limited. This meeting is being held through video conferencing in accordance with the circulars issued by Ministry of Corporate Affairs, applicable provisions of the Companies Act 2013 and SEBI listing regulations. The proceedings of this meeting are being webcasted live for all our shareholders as per the details provided in the notice to the Annual General Meeting. The proceedings of this meeting are also being recorded for compliance purposes. In accordance with the provisions of the Companies Act and SEBI listing regulations, members have been provided with the facility to exercise their right to vote by electronic means, both through remote e-voting facility and e-voting at the Annual General Meeting. Remote e-voting facility was made available to all the members holding shares as on the cutoff date, April 19th, 2022, during the period commencing from 9 a.m. on the period commencing from 9 a.m. on April 22, 22 till 5 p.m. on April 25, 22. Members joining the meeting through video conferencing facility who have not yet cast their vote by means of remote e-voting may vote through the e-voting facility provided at this annual general meeting. The e-voting platform is open now for voting and will close 30 minutes from the time of closure of this meeting. The members who have cast their votes by remote e-voting prior to this meeting are requested not to cast their vote once again. The Board of Directors have appointed Makaran Joshi and Associates Practicing Company Secretaries as the scrutinizer for this meeting. Based on the report of the scrutinizer, the combined results of remote e-voting and the e-voting on the website of the done at the meeting today will be announced and displayed on the website of the company and will also be submitted to the stock exchanges as per the requirements under the SEBI regulations. I now request Mr. Aditya Narayanan, our chairman, to continue with the proceedings of the meeting.
Thank you, Radhika. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Aditya Narayan, Chairman of the Board of Directors of your company, and I will be chairing this meeting today. On behalf of the Board of Directors and the company, it is indeed my privilege to welcome you all to the 66th AGM of Sanofi India Limited being conducted through video conferencing facility. As you know, this is my 6th AGM and the 3rd AGM now being held, conducted virtually. To begin with, hope all of you and your families are well and keeping safe, and hopefully we see ourselves soon coming out of the pandemic. Though it would have been a pleasure to meet you all in person, yet in the given circumstances, I do believe that this is a safe and efficient way of transacting our business in the prevailing environment. And I look forward to your cooperation in the smooth conduct of today's meeting. Thank you. The Company Secretary has informed me that the number of participants on this VC required for the quorum of this meeting are present. I therefore declare the meeting valid and open. I would now like to introduce to you my illustrious colleagues appearing on the screen. I would request each member to acknowledge when I introduce him or her as the case may be. Let me now move on with the introduction. First, Mrs. Usha Thorat, Independent Director and Chairperson of the Audit Committee and the Nomination and Remuneration Committee, attending this meeting from Kolhapur. As you know, she started her second 5-year term as an Independent Director last year on the 30th of April 2021. Next, let me introduce you Mr. Rahul Bhatnagar, Independent Director and Chairperson of the CSR Committee and the Stakeholder Relationship Committee, attending this meeting from Sanofi India Head Office in Mumbai. As you know, he joined the company as an Independent Director on 29 July 2020. Number 3. Let me now turn to Mr. Mark Anthony Lucchini, who's at the extreme right, Non-Executive Director attending this meeting from Sanofi India Head Office, Mumbai. As you all know, he is the head of the foundation business, General Medicine, based out of Sanofi in Paris. Next, Mr. Charles Billard, non-executive director, attending this meeting from Paris. He is the head of finance global corporate function based out of Sanofi, Paris. Some of you all might remember him from his earlier days when he used to be with us as a full-time director and CFO of the company. Next, Mr. Rodolfo Ross, Managing Director of your company with effect from 1st June 2022, subject to applicable approvals, attending this meeting from the Sanofi India head office, Mumbai. And I will have more on this in due course. Mr. Vaibhav Karandikar, whole-time director and CFO, attending the meeting from Sanofi India head office, Mumbai, seated next to me. Mr. Cherian Matthew, whole-time director and head of industrial affairs, he is attending this meeting via video conferencing from Ireland. And next to me finally is Mrs. Radhika Shah, your new company secretary, attending this meeting from the company's India head office in Mumbai. Also present we have Mr. Arun Ramdas, partner PwC, who are the statutory auditors of the company. Mr. Omkar Dindorkar, authorized representative and partner of Makaran and Joshi and Company, who are the secretarial auditors of the company and scrutinizers of the e-voting process of this AGM and the cost auditors of this company. Now let me just quickly cover some of the important changes which have taken place in the directorate since we last met. Mr. Cyril Grandchamp Disro, non-executive director, stepped down from your company's board on 24th November 2021. As you might recall, he had joined the board on 23rd February 2017. Further, on 13th January 2022, Mr. Rajaram Narayanan, managing director of the company, informed us that he had decided to pursue interests outside Sanofi. He left the company's services on 10th April 2022. You will recall that he had been appointed as MD on 1st January 2018. On behalf of the board, I take this opportunity to record our deep appreciation for their valuable contributions during their respective tenures on the board. Next, you will probably remember Mr. Vaibhav Karandikar joined the board as whole-time director and CFO on 23rd February 2021, and we continue to look forward to his strong contributions. Now let me mention something more on Mr. Rodolfo Ross, which I had promised a little while ago. It gives us indeed great pleasure in welcoming him in being appointed as Managing Director of your company with effect from 1st June 2022. The board approved this appointment in its meeting on 18th April 2022. He has been the general manager and a very successful one for the consumer healthcare business of Sanofi in Brazil since April 2017 and brings a wealth of very relevant experience and diverse skills to your company to take your company forward. I am sure you will join me in wishing him all the very best for a successful tenure. The effective start date of his appointment is 1st June 2022. It is of course subject to the applicable approvals which are being pursued. Next, let me welcome again Mrs. Radhika Shah, who joined as your company secretary and compliance officer with effect from 1st of November 2021, in succession to Girish Tekchandani, who left the services of your company on 31st August 2021. On behalf of the board, I thank Girish for his contribution and wish Radhika a really successful tenure ahead. And now, let me mention a few things about this meeting. First, I will talk very briefly about the key achievements of your company in the year 2021. Next, we will then cover proposals and resolutions which have been placed before you for the approval. We had requested all of you to send in advance your queries of the proposals and your queries in the AGM notice and other matters relating to annual report. in this meeting we will be able to respond to only those queries which have already been received by us before the cutoff time. We have also considered suggestions received at the last AGM of the company and dealt with them appropriately. We will, of course, open the lines for those shareholders who have registered themselves to speak at this AGM. We would like to hear your suggestions, inputs, and comments on the company's performance, but please stick to the AGM and the notice and the company report. If you have any further queries on the business operations, we may not be able to respond to them today, but the company secretary will surely respond to you in due course of time. And now to the business of this meeting. I trust that you have already received the annual report and the notice of the AGM containing the resolutions to be voted on. The statutory registers required to be kept open at this meeting, and all other documents referred to in the notice can be inspected in electronic mode by any member. You may send email requests on the email ID provided in the notice of the AGM, and the company secretary will organize electronic inspection of those registers. The notice of this meeting and the auditor's report have been with you for quite some time as part of the annual report. The notice of this meeting is therefore being considered as read. I am happy to inform you that Mr. Arun Ramdas, partner PwC Statutory Orders, is also present in this meeting, and I'm sure will be looking for any queries you might have. The auditor's report for the year 31st December 21 is being considered as read, as I have already explained to you. So the first part of the meeting, and I'll quickly make a brief statement before we move on to the next part of the meeting. Dear members, your company's performance for the year 2021 is captured in the annual report, which I presume would have already been seen by you. Accordingly, I propose to just highlight some of the key points ahead of your voting on the resolutions in the notice of the AGM. Despite all the uncertainties created by the pandemic, during the year your company has successfully implemented transformational initiatives to not only improve the financials, but to strengthen its capabilities for the longer term and make a positive difference to the patients, partners, communities, and all its employees. This quest of your company is captured very nicely in its brand new unifying purpose. We chase the miracles of science to improve people's lives. I'll have more on this later. Performance of the company for the year 2021 now. You must have noted from the results 2021 that they are not comparable with that of the previous year in view of the completion of the slump scale transaction of Ankleshwar manufacturing facility in May 2020 and the completion of the slump sale transaction of the company's nutraceuticals business in 2021. Also, during these years, the operating environment saw fluctuating periods of significant disruption caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now the Indian pharmaceutical industry, just one line comment on it. From the subdued growth of 4% in 2021, it jumped to 18% growth in 2021 on the back of a sharp increase in demand for acute care therapies, including anti-infectives, respiratory, gastro and pain, and COVID-related medicines. The demand for medicines of chronic therapies like diabetes and cardiovasculars remained relatively steady. For the year 2021, your company achieved revenue from operations of rupees 29.6 billion as against rupees 29 billion in the previous year, representing a small growth of 2%, as its domestic business in India delivered a strong growth of 13%, but exports dropped in view of the divestments. Net profit of the company for the year 2021 came in at rupees 9.4 billion, registering a growth of over 97% over the previous year, mainly on account of profit from sale of the nutraceuticals business of rupees 4.9 billion and about an 8% improvement in the operating profit. After considering the closure of the slump sale transactions and reviewing the cash requirements of the company's operations, in addition to a final dividend of rupees 181 per equity share, your board recommended a one-time special dividend of rupees 309 per equity share for the year ended 31st December 21. Thus, the total dividend of rupees 490 per share will be paid after due approval from the applicable resolutions which are there later on. And now let me turn to the operating business environment and your company's progress with some of its key initiatives. The Indian economy is slowly but surely recovering from the disruption caused by the pandemic over the past 2 years. The recent geopolitical tensions and the prevailing environment of steeper commodity prices, higher inflation, and global supply chain bottlenecks continue to dampen the full recovery in the near term. However, the longer term continues to raise expectations of India being amongst the fastest growing economies in the world. The pandemic underscored several deficiencies in India's healthcare infrastructure. But as you know, the government has already moved to increase allocations to build necessary capabilities and capacities. All these developments augur well for the longer term growth of the India pharma industry. During the recent uncertain times, it has indeed been heartening to see companies with a clear purpose and responsible leadership rapidly reinvent themselves to stay future relevant. Your company too successfully implemented several transformational steps across all areas to build appropriate capabilities for the future. Its cutting edge science and world class manufacturing, fueled by data and digital technologies, continue to better service the evolving needs of its customers and patients. Your company's human capital remained the key driving force in meeting your business needs, and I am delighted to mention that for the fourth year in a row, your company has been recognized as the top employer 2022 for its outstanding HR practices and policies. This year, your company's employees demonstrated extraordinary efforts in adapting to the evolving environment and ensuring delivery of your company's products and services without any major disruption, despite the rapidly changing regulatory environment in view of the evolving pandemic. During the year 2021, your company made continuous efforts to enhance its performance by focusing on patient-centric initiatives, strengthening its brands, reshaping its manufacturing footprint, controlling costs, building organizational capabilities for the future, and progressing its impactful CSR agenda. All this while ensuring full compliance with its high standards of good governance. I am sure you would have noticed from the annual report many more details about all these activities and all the pictures which are there on the CSR activities as well. In conclusion, I would want to say that as we march ahead in a volatile operating environment, your company will pursue its purpose with excellence in all it does as it continues its journey of chasing the miracles of science to improve people's lives. I now turn to the next part of the talk which I had. I talk about the resolutions proposed to be passed at this meeting. As you would have seen, we have 5 resolutions for approval in this AGM. The first item on the notice relates to the approval and adoption of annual accounts for the year ended 31st December 2021. The second item on the notice relates to declaration of the final dividend and the one-time special dividend on equity shares for the financial year 31st December 21. The third item on the notice relates to the reappointment of Mr. Cherian Matthew as director who retires by rotation and is eligible for reappointment. The fourth item is related to the reappointment of Messrs. Pricewaterhouse Chartered Accountants LLP as statutory auditors of the company for a second term of 5 years from the conclusion of this 66th AGM meeting until the conclusion of the 71st AGM in accordance with the Companies Act and SEBI listing regulations. The fifth item on the notice relates to the payment of remuneration to the cost auditor. Since this meeting is being held through VC facilities and resolutions are put to vote only through e-voting, the practice of proposing and seconding the resolutions has not been followed. As part of the AGM, the shareholders who have queries or seeking clarifications on these proposals or on the annual report were requested to send their queries on email on or before 5 p.m. of Friday 22nd April 2022. Today, We will be able to answer questions to these queries at the meeting which were received in advance as per the above guidelines. That brings me to the Q&A session of this meeting. That's the third part of what I had said right in the beginning I would be talking about. Many queries received from the shareholders are common, and there are queries which are related to one another. We have classified these queries in two groups, and we will accordingly give our responses. We have also received many suggestions along with these queries, and we have noted your suggestions, and we will no doubt consider them in future to see what best we can do to deal with them. The first group of questions is on topics related to the performance of the individual products or therapies areas or margins on such products. There are also queries on the future outlook of the business, manufacturing facilities, capacity utilization, or profitability. Due to competitive reasons, we do not discuss individual product or therapy areas, and we will not be able to give you any comments on these questions. Also, we do not give future guidance, and hence questions relating to future outlook are not being responded to. The second group of questions are on business performance, financial matters, operations, regulatory issues, exports, and manufacturing. Mr. Vaibhav Karandikar, whole-time director and CFO, will give comments on these questions. And I would like to hand over the meeting to Vaibhav for addressing these questions. All yours, Vaibhav.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have received questions like the chairman indicated on overall sales growth. There are questions on specific therapies. There are questions on price control and its impact. There are questions on manufacturing. So I will take the questions accordingly in that sequence. So the first question that was there was on the overall sales growth of the domestic business post the divestment. That means essentially the sales growth over the last 3 years of the retained business. So the sales growth over the last 3 years of the retained business has been double digit. The compounded sales growth, it's around 10%. There is a question on product launch specifically, and in which legal entity the future product launches would happen. We don't specifically comment on product launches in the future. However, as a principle, any products in the therapy areas of diabetes and consumer healthcare, that is the therapies in which the listed entity is present, these will be launched through the listed entity. You have seen that the company has launched Toujeo in India, and the recent introduction of Toujeo pens and cartridges to drive the market growth reinforces this principle very strongly. We have also launched Allegra Nasal in the CHC space. In terms of questions on specific therapies and business, there's a question on the insulin market size in India and the adoption rate for insulins in India versus the global benchmark. The total insulin market is approximately 4,400 crores, and Sanofi with a 19% market share is the fastest growing company in the insulin space with a 13% growth. Lantus is the third largest brand in the Indian pharma market. Globally, that is in the West and the developed part of the world, the insulin adoption rate is around 35%, which means that 1/3 of the diabetes patients roughly take insulin. In India, the insulin adoption rate is still low at around 18%. There is a question on what is the proportion of the diabetes and the cardiovascular business in the total domestic business. Diabetes, including oral portfolio for us, constitutes almost 46% of the total business, and cardio constitutes 11% of the total domestic sales of the company. There are a few questions on the CHC business, and one question came in is what is the impact of the global carve-out of the CHC business, and is there any impact on India? I think it's important to clarify here that globally the CHC initiative is a carve-in and it's not a carve-out. And it is to give space to the CHC business globally to expand and grow faster, considering the different dynamics of this business. In India, CHC contributes to 25% of the total domestic business and is one of the key priorities for Sanofi India. And the key priority is to build the CHC portfolio. Again, a question on CHC, specifically on the calcium and the vitamin D3 market in India and the performance of Depura as a product. Calcium and vitamin D3 market in India is roughly 2,700 crores and it has 11% growth. Depura has shown a 22% growth in this market, and it's now ranked 9th in India. Depura again is an important growth driver for us for the CHC business. There is a question on the hospital business of the company and what is the reach of the hospital business. So your company presently covers roughly 650 hospitals, and to expand our reach and business, we intend to add significantly more hospitals through the hybrid model going forward. There is a question on the sales force size in India and the impact of soframycin divestment on sales force. So the total sales force strength in India is 1,800, out of which 1,500 are medical reps. Your company will continue to invest in digital platforms to expand the coverage in the future. There is no impact on sales force due to the the soframycin divestment, considering that it was only a brand sale. There is a question on impact on Lantus in case this is included in the national list of essential medicines or price control. The list of the national essential medicines is not yet in the public domain, and therefore it would not be right to comment on inclusion of Lantus under price control at this stage. However, it's in case we have this situation, we had explained in the last interaction during the investor call that while there will be a top line impact of this situation, the bottom line impact will be limited since we follow an arm's length principle for the traded portfolio. It's important to also note that there's clearly a potential for volume increase in this scenario as Lantus prices will be in line with biosimilars. There is a question on implementation of the wholesale price of 10%, which has been recently notified. As you're all aware, we are allowed to increase the price of the controlled products by 10.76% as per the notification. We cannot comment on specific products, but we will apply the price increase permitted considering the competitive intensity. It is, however, important to note that there is also a re-averaging in prices that may be implemented by the government for the controlled products as prescribed under the drug price control order, and that may have a downward impact on prices of the controlled product going forward. There is a question on the Goa manufacturing site and its use as a manufacturing hub for the group, and also capex plans for Goa. As you're all aware, Sanofi India has the manufacturing capability and the efficiency in the Goa site, and it also has a significant advantage being one of the low-cost manufacturing sites globally. We are constantly working with the global supply chain teams to explore opportunities for having more products transferred to the Goa site. The capacity in Goa is largely sufficient to take care of additional requirement with minimum capital expenditure. There is a question on the increase in active product ingredient prices, especially paracetamol, and its impact on the company. So prices of paracetamol, which showed a substantial increase last year, has stabilized in the current year. The negative impact of the price increase for the export business is largely compensated for by increase in the export prices. However, for the domestic business, this impact needs to be absorbed considering the price regulations in the country. There is a question on impact of on exports business because of the Russia situation. I think it's important to note here that Russian business accounts for roughly 20% of our total exports. It stands at around 75 crores. There have been delays in cargo shipments due to the ongoing conflict, and we are currently rerouting the shipments through Belgium. So while there is no impact of demand in the Russian market, there will be some supply chain constraints in the short term, which we need to be mindful of. But as of now, if we are able to overcome the supply chain constraints, the impact on the business is limited. There was one question on continuity of service income because that forms a significant portion of the revenue, roughly 5% of total revenues. And it's important to clarify that the service income relates to the services rendered to the group companies for services like sales, marketing, general administrative services. And this service income will continue to the basis the current contractual arrangement with the parties. One final question on strategy before I hand over to the chairman for answering the other questions on the strategy. Was any possibility of further consolidation of Sanofi Group in India by merging Sanofi Healthcare with Sanofi India, which is the listed entity? There is no such proposal under evaluation at present. However, the board will continue to evaluate all options in the interest of the shareholders. There were a few other questions related to strategy, which I now request the chairman to take care of.
Thank you, Vaibhav. Let me address the remaining questions. The first one is about company strategy, alignment of strategy between Sanofi India and Sanofi globally. Let me start by first putting a caveat. We have received a number of questions from members on the overall strategy and future growth plans, but some of them relate to topics related to individual products, therapy areas, or margins, and I don't think we want to discuss them for competitive reasons. As you know, we don't give any future guidance. However, coming to explaining what we can answer without a problem, and it has already been answered in many investor calls by my colleagues. The key business priorities of your company remain accelerated growth in diabetics, selective and profitable growth in established products, and build consumer healthcare. Some characteristics on the India market that we keep in mind are that in India, chronic therapies are driving market growth. Brands matter and have a long life if nurtured well. As you know, 9 out of the top 10 brands in India have been present for more than 15 years. The key priorities of your company are thus based on the market conditions, potential, and also leveraging its current key strengths. The global Sanofi Group's priorities consider multiple other markets, of course, including India, which are significant in size and also where healthcare funding is not out of pocket of the patients. Therefore, to that extent, the differentiation in the approach will continue to remain based on market conditions. So long and short, your company remains very committed to growth. It will factor in what is locally correct for us to do from market conditions. And now let me address some of the questions which pertain to the new leadership. We have already introduced to you the new managing director. Rodolfo will assume office on the 1st of June 2022, subject to regulatory approvals. And he has already met the leadership team and quite frankly is very, very keen to be able to contribute to the development of the company in the time to come. He is so committed that he has actually come and decided that he could be present for this AGM today itself. So, very welcome, Rodolfo, and wish you all the best.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Now let me move to the suggestions. Members who wish to speak at the meeting were requested to register themselves as a speaker by sending an email to the company on or before 5 p.m. on Thursday, 21st April 22. We received overwhelming response from shareholders wanting to speak at the meeting. This year, we have speakers from Mumbai as well as other cities in India. Due to the VC format of the meeting and in the interest of time, we may not be able to listen to all the shareholders. However, those we are able to accommodate, we will be very happy to not only listen but note their suggestions and see what best we can do to deal with them. Each speaker will have a maximum of 3 minutes to express his or her view. At the end of 2 minutes, you will hear a prompt in the form of a sound bell. Please don't misunderstand it, but this bell will really be there to help you finish in 3 minutes' time. And you can understand it is important that in order to give chance to as many people as possible, that keeping to 3 minutes will be quite important and very considerate of you for others. You may start concluding your remarks as soon as you hear the bell. I would like to highlight to the speakers that when I take your name, your mic will be opened by the moderator of this meeting. You will have to also unmute the audio and start the video from your end to start speaking. So I hope everything goes well, and like last year, we'll be able to have a very useful interaction. The first speaker for the day is Mr. Kaushik Shahukar.
That's right.
I-
Mr. Shankar, can you kindly accept the invitation to
Yeah.
switch your camera on and speak? We, we can hear you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of, I would like to thank the board of directors for giving me an opportunity again this year to speak in this forum. Many of you would remember me from the conversation in the past years. So I will skip both my introduction and ask brief. I hope I'm clearly audible.
Yes, you are.
Myself, Kaushik Shahukar from Mumbai, a qualified chartered accountant. Uh, I have been free from dystonia, which has rendered 55% of my body paralyzed. It has impacted my right hand, my right leg, and the stick. While I have not let that come in my way of becoming a chartered accountant and a practicing, I do request your support in helping me continue with health plan. I hope I'm clearly audible till now.
Absolutely audible, sir. Please go ahead.
I was optimistic after our conversation we had last year about we working for our organization on certification work, including Form 15 TP. However, nothing has progressed since. While I understand things may not have progressed due to pandemic.
Thank you, Mr. Shankar. You were very clear. Thank you so much. May I request our next speaker, Mr. Vimal Kumar Agarwal, to kindly accept our invitation to unmute, switch your camera on, and go ahead and speak. Mr. Agarwal, if you would kindly accept our invitation to unmute your microphone. We can see you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Uh, First of all, I thank the
Vaibhav Karandikar, full-time director and CFO, if they would like to make any comments on these suggestions or respond to any other points. Over to you, gentlemen.
Thank you for moderating it so nicely, and I'm delighted that so many shareholders could actually share their views. Uh, I have 3 points to mention, and I'll split them in 3 parts. First one is there are some very specific pointed questions which have already been answered or can readily be answered straight away, and that I will request Vaibhav to respond to straight away. He will probably take 5, maybe 10 minutes. Then, yes, there has been a suggestion from one of the shareholders that why don't we request Rodolfo to share at least an initial reaction to his visit, though he is just an invitee to the meeting today. And he has very kindly agreed that, we will probably hear him, maybe very briefly this time and much more in detail in future, but we'll try and create some space. And the third part is, I have some summing up comments to mention based on some of the suggestions which you all have made, and I'll try and conclude the meeting with that. So thank you. Vaibhav first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll answer the questions in the order that they were asked. The first question was on the flat revenues. I think at the beginning we mentioned that excluding the divestment which we have carried out, the domestic business is growing around 12 to 13%. So you need to look at it excluding the divested business. That is how the retained business is growing. There was a comment on profitability decline in Q4 2021. I think the most important reason for that was there was a return to work in Q4 2021. We had not met as a company for a long time, so we had physical meetings, we had engagements to discuss strategy and how to grow the business, etc. There was a incremental A&P during this quarter, and importantly, there was also a phasing of the corporate social responsibility expenditure in this quarter in December because it was phased more towards the last quarter of 2021, and therefore you would see that there was a blip in the profitability for the December 2021 quarter, which was one of the questions that was asked. There was a question on litigations and can we settle some of the litigations? I think from a both direct and indirect tax point of view, we are in different stages of appeal with commissioner appeals, with tribunals, with high courts, and there are some litigations where the company has won and the departments are in appeal, and sometimes it's vice versa. We are always evaluating these cases to settle them if it's in the business, is the best interest of the company. We have opted for the Sabka Saath Sabka Vishwas scheme for indirect tax, and we have settled some of the indirect tax litigation, and we'll continue to monitor this as we go along. There was a question on booster doses. I think I'm very happy to note that the company has not only ensured that the employees get a reimbursement for the first 2 doses, but beyond employees, the company has also taken care of their partners, the clearing and forwarding agents, and ensured that they also get the benefit of the reimbursement from a company point of view. The question on booster doses, we are favorably considering this, and the best interest of employees and our business partners will be in our mind, and we will take the decision accordingly. There was a question on how many headcount were added in 2021. It's more a reduction because of the nutraceutical divestment, where there were a certain people who moved with the business. So it's a reduction more than an increase. There was a question on solar plant and what is the capex expenditure on this. It's important to note that this is more a OPEX model that we have opted for, and it's not a capex intensive model. So it's a OPEX model for solar, and therefore there is no capital investment in Goa for this solar plant. There was a question on what are the exchanges that we have with Sanofi Healthcare, what is the products that we buy or sell from them. We buy the Toujeo and the Lantus cartridges, as well as All-Star pens, which are required for our insulin portfolio because Sanofi Healthcare manufactures and packs these products for us. There was a question on Soframycin, whether we still continue to own the brand. The answer is no, we do not continue to own the brand. NQ will now own the brand for us. So it's not that we will continue to own the brand. We will, however, continue to continue with the tender business for the government tenders which are still open. So we will book those sales for the period which the tenders are open. But once that is concluded, there will be no more soframycin transactions in the company's books. There was a question on increase in inventory. I think the inventory increase is account of two reasons. One, we are building some inventory for the insulin part of the business, and there was some increase in the export-related inventory, which is one of the reasons for the increase in inventory. There was a question on why Ankleshwar profit is not disclosed in the 2020 accounts. It's important to note that when we evaluated the Ankleshwar transaction, we actually booked an impairment in 2019, and therefore there is no profit or loss in 2020. What you see in the books of accounts is just the transaction costs which have come in, and this is disclosed by way of a note in the accounts. One last question or two questions. One from Mr. Dipankar on the diabetes portfolio and the strategy of the company to discontinue diabetes. I think it's important to state that we are in fact looking at accelerated growth in diabetes, and right now in the medium term we don't see any impact of the discontinuation of the research in this area. There was a question on why would somebody partner with us. It's important to state, and we made this comment in the last interaction during the investor call also, that while we decide to discontinue the research in-house, we are open to acquisitions in this space, provided there is cutting-edge technology, and the group is open for tie-ups and acquisitions in the diabetes space. One question on foreign exchange. We were usually having equal imports and exports till 2020. That means the exports and imports was largely equal. After the divestment of Ankleshwar, the export business has reduced, and therefore the imports are higher than the export component. I think whatever questions I've noted, I've answered. One last question on the factory visit. I think currently the situation on the pandemic still demands us to be careful. So in the near term, we will not look at it immediately, but the secretarial team will all in the future take care of it as things evolve and improve. I now hand over to the chairman for answering other key important points.
Thank you very much, Vaibhav. I hope some of the questions and some of the issues which were raised have been very clearly and fully answered. I have a few more to add to what Vaibhav has already answered. First of all, I think there is a very interesting point which comes out listening to all the shareholders. Some people love the video conferencing mode, particularly those who are not in Mumbai. Others would like it to be physical. And I know Mrs. Patel suggested that why don't we combine the two. So I leave it with the company secretary to look at what's the best thing to do for future. But that's an interesting point which I would note it very carefully. The other part which of course has come out is I have to thank all the shareholders for all the positive comments which you have so strongly supported the resolutions and also supported all of us and the management and the employees in particular for the extraordinary efforts which have gone in last year despite COVID. So thank you very much for all your good comments. Now, in terms of questions, yes, there was one question about from one person, Mr. Purkayast, I think, which was about whether or not we are following the statutes in terms of putting up the transcripts, etc. I think what I am informed is that the regulations which he mentioned are actually applicable after 1st of April 2022. This call was in March, and therefore you may find some gaps in that part which you were talking about, but that effectiveness is really 1st of April. So the reason for my specifically answering this question is that as a company, we are absolutely committed to follow all the statutes to the dot. We do not just believe in good governance, we are very keen to practice it to the full dot. And I would look forward to your support in ensuring that our image remains exactly of a fully compliant organization when we actually are. So thank you very much for mentioning that and giving me the opportunity to clarify. The other 2 points which I want to talk about is that there is a feeling which was left with many people, particularly in Mumbai, that because LIC and ONGC and some other companies are holding physical meetings, that we should straight away have jumped into physical meetings. You will remember we declared our results in February, the environment on COVID has improved quite significantly since February. At that time, when we did decide to take on this as a video conferencing being the safest route, we were not so sure that COVID would be reduced to this level, which it has become. And in order to avoid any uncertainty, we thought it is better that we'll stick to what is a tried, tested, effective manner, which is safe in COVID times. The second bit, which I think is very important, and there I'll share with you personally, nobody should think COVID is over. It is still very much around. I have recently come from Delhi. There is a fine for not wearing a mask in Delhi, which has had to be reimposed because of the rising number of cases which took place very recently. So my request, humble request to everybody will be, don't take it lightly. Please do look after yourselves and continue to take whatever is the correct precaution to take. I also wish and pray that we could physically meet, and I think I mentioned it in my talk as well, that it would have been a pleasure to meet you all in person. It's been such a long time anyway, that I would love to do that, and I hope that next year we are able to do that. So do take care, do look after yourself, but don't think COVID is over. Please be very careful with taking all the correct precautions which are required to be taken. And before I answer any further questions and have further comments, I must finish one other business. There was one excellent suggestion which came from one of the shareholders requesting that we actually get Rodolfo to say a few words so that you all can listen to his nice voice rather than just seeing his good face. So all the best, Rodolfo. Just a short introduction would be very nice.
Good
Thank
afternoon to all, and I hope you're all safe and well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the invitation to join the AGM in advance of my official start date. Thank you also for your kind words in introducing myself to the public in this meeting. Mr. Bessania, thank you for your genuine mention and the prompt for me to speak. Also want to extend a thank you to all the shareholders that are present here today for their many suggestions, questions, and comments, which I'm sure are going to help us drive improvements in the company going forward. I am deeply honored by the appointment, and I am looking forward to my official start date on June 1st. I envision great growth potential for this thriving business in this fantastic market of India. And for now, I am very much focused on preparing myself for that first date on June 1st. And in that way, I am focusing on listening, learning, and digesting, more so than speaking what I have in mind. And I think this is a good approach actually for this transition phase. And and this is the way I'm preparing myself to join the colleagues of Sanofi India and join the leadership of Sanofi India on that date. From that point onwards, I'll be able to contribute to the plans and contribute to the strategy together with the team, together with the solid senior leadership team that we have in the company. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. It was always wonderful to listen to you, and I'm delighted that you chose to speak. I'm sure people will remember your starting words. All the best.
Thank you.
This, in a way, brings me to the end of the meeting. But before I announce the closure of the meeting, there are a few important points for me to mention as the last points for the meeting. First, members who have still not voted on resolutions are requested to cast their votes on the NSDL e-voting system. The detailed process of voting is mentioned in the AGM notice. Let me remind you that voting will close after 30 minutes from the time of closure of this meeting. I also now wish to thank our employees across our company for their strong commitment to the values of Sanofi and their relentless perseverance to deliver their best for all customers and patients. I would also like to record my thanks to all the government agencies and other stakeholders who have continued their firm support to all our activities. Also, as I conclude, I would like to once again thank you on behalf of all members of the board for your continued trust, goodwill, and support in all our endeavors. And last of all, I must wish you and your families all the very best for a safer and healthier tomorrow. With this, with your permission, I would like to close this meeting. Remember, 30 minutes more left for voting. So please do vote if you have not already done so. Thank you very much for your support, and God bless.